This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. There is something I feel like a lot of people get wrong when talking about backup quarterbacks, right? Because we have unfortunately had to have this conversation about backup quarterbacks all year. We've had to talk about backup quarterbacks because Deshaun's hurt. Deshaun comes back. We talking about backup quarterbacks because Deshaun goes down again. And then our backup gets hurt. And we talking about backup quarterbacks again. We've talked about backup quarterbacks all year. We've been having silly debates about Josh Dobbs. And I feel like the debate itself, the talking point itself, misses the entire point of what you can get away with if a star player goes down. Because a lot of the talking points, a lot of the things that I'm hearing or seeing from people who have significant influence, they're saying, man, general managers should learn that they got to start developing and investing in good backup quarterback play. And while that is a nice thing to put out there and something that's very easy to tweet, but definitely much more difficult to actually put into practice because good quarterbacks, they don't grow on trees. We went 10 years with maybe 14 good quarterbacks in the NFL. Like a starting level quarterback, not easy to find. Remember how everybody assumed that Kenny Pickett would be Andy Dalton? Because that's the worst thing you could be as a quarterback, right? You Andy Dalton. Right now, he's like Cody Kessler. And the thing we forget is that the most likely thing for a quarterback to be that's drafted is probably a backup. Most quarterbacks who are drafted probably end up as a backup if they stay in the league. And honestly, that's the upper percentage of quarterbacks that are drafted. Most quarterbacks that are drafted don't make it past the rookie contract. But yet every time you draft a quarterback, you expect them, and people say this dumbass line about, oh yeah, they could be Andy Dalton. They could be Kirk Cousins. No, you can't. That's an exceptional outcome for a quarterback that's drafted, is to become Andy Dalton or Kirk Cousins. Right? So one, there's this perception that does not match reality at all, that you can just develop a backup quarterback that's going to be as good as your starter. Just doesn't match reality at all. And the main point I think that these kind of talking points miss is what actually helps you move on if your quarterback gets hurt. And I've seen people run face forward into the point and miss it with the Cleveland Browns all year. See, the Cleveland Browns are one of a handful of teams that have had to start a backup quarterback all year. The Cleveland Browns have the best record of all of those teams at 7-5. If there's a team that's had to start a backup quarterback longer than the Browns that has a better record, please let me know. But I don't believe there is one, right? The only team that's comparable is Colts, and I believe we either have the same record as them, but we beat them head-to-head with the backup quarterback. Or we are one game ahead of them. I think they lost to the Texans, so we're one game ahead of them. And the point people miss all the time with this, right? The fact that the Browns are 7-5 with a backup quarterback. Everybody goes to, well, what if you had a better backup quarterback? And think that that would fix something. I don't think it would. It's all hypotheticals, right? It's all, well, I think if we have this guy that I like, then this play that I didn't like doesn't happen. But all the stuff that did happen that helped us be close in that game still happens with the guy that I like, right? It's all that kind of hypothetical, it's just not tangible arguments, right? But the truth is, your backup plan for your quarterback going down is the rest of the roster. This is what it's like in any sport. If your best player goes down in basketball, your backup plan isn't the dude that backs up LeBron James. It's the second best player on the team. That's the backup plan, right? When LeBron was in Cleveland, if LeBron went down, Kyrie was the backup plan. The backup plan wasn't Iman Shumpert. But quarterback, we overvalue it sometimes, especially when it comes to quarterbacks who aren't elite. Like elite quarterbacks deserve all the value that they get, but non-elite quarterbacks sometimes get overvalued. Like Daniel Jones, guys who just are on teams that do good. People assume that it all has to do with the quarterback, when once your quarterback is not elite, the impact that that quarterback has can be very minimal. Hell, it could even be negative and you can win in spite of it. We apply the same kind of logic that we apply to elite quarterbacks to non-elite quarterbacks. And this leads us to this conversation to where we think the solution for Deshaun Watson going down is who his backup is. The solution for Deshaun Watson going down is the second best player on the team, like in any other sport. Your solution for Deshaun Watson going down? Well, Myles Garrett got to step up. Your solution for Nick Chubb going down was that Deshaun Watson had to step up. Not Jerome Ford. We're not expecting Jerome Ford to be Nick Chubb. We're like, okay, now the burden gets placed on Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson goes down. Now the burden of Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson gets placed on Myles Garrett. If Myles Garrett goes down, burden gets placed on nobody. We ain't got enough. The solution for surviving a season with your backup quarterback, as the Browns have proven, but people like still are so fixated on going LOL Browns that they'll go, well, the Browns have an elite defense. That's why they're 7-5. But boy, if they had Josh, no, they're 7-5 because the quarterback went down and they have an elite defense. Yes. If they had a better backup quarterback, they'd still be 7-5. Because the backup plan for Deshaun Watson going down was the defense. Not who's the backup. The backup, not really that relevant in this situation. Again, if LeBron James went down, you don't talk about his backup replacing LeBron James's role. You talk about it being a committee. It's the same thing with quarterback, but yet we refuse to acknowledge it like that. You could develop all the money. You could develop all the resources. You could throw all the money at developing backup quarterbacks that you want. It ain't going to change nothing if your starter go down and the rest of your team is butt. That money is better being spent at other positions than backup quarterback, because your backup quarterback is only going to be as good as the pieces around him. Look at the Cincinnati Bengals. Everybody's all hype about what Jake Browning was able to do. Why was Jake Browning able to do that? Because he got Jamar Chase, he got T. Higgins, he got Tyler Boyd. He can run the ball with two good running backs. It's easier to have a backup quarterback play well in those circumstances. You see what I mean here? People are so fixated on the backup quarterback. It's not about the backup quarterback. It's about the situation that the backup quarterback's in. And if you spend all that money that you could spend fixing the situation on a backup quarterback, or all those draft picks that you could spend fixing the situation on a backup quarterback, you're going to be pretty disappointed when you have a decent backup quarterback who can't do shit. We'd have the same conversations about mediocre quarterbacks that we have about elite quarterbacks. And I don't know why we haven't realized this. Just because you get to the playoffs with the quarterback does not mean that that quarterback's elite. Just because you win a bunch of games with the quarterback does not mean that that quarterback's elite. We've learned this lesson so many times and we refuse to learn the right lessons. There are like 6 quarterbacks in the league that are elite. They deserve to be talked about and deserve for the position to be talked about with that standard of elite quarterback. But yet we do the same thing that we do with Pat Mahomes with Josh Dobbs. It don't make no damn sense. I've seen this sentiment, and I've seen people try to use the Browns as a negative example of, oh man, if they had a better backup quarterback, they'd be much better. The reason that they're still 7-5 is because the backup situation for the quarterback going down is working. It's the defense. It's the roster around the quarterback. The Browns have had the worst quarterback play from backups of all the teams that had their starter go down. Somehow have the best record, because the Browns understood that the best backup plan to your quarterback going down isn't who's the backup quarterback. It's who's around the backup quarterback. We're so focused on quarterback that we can't see the forest for the trees, or the trees for the forest, whatever way it goes. We can't see the big picture. We're so fixated on arguing about backup quarterbacks. Whether you think Josh Dobbs should still be here, whether you think Jacoby Brissett should still be here, whether you think that Joe Flacco, DTR, we're so fixated on arguing every little detail about the backup quarterback position when it doesn't really matter that much. This is my point that I brought up when I was previewing this Jaguars game. I don't care who starts this week. If it's DTR and the defense plays well, the Browns can win this game. If it's Joe Flacco and the defense plays well, the Browns can win this game. But you know what this game shouldn't hinge on? If Joe Flacco or DTR play well. Because if we're relying on that, we're going to lose. Because they're backup quarterbacks. They're never going to be that good. Because if they were, they wouldn't be here. DTR is a little bit of a different situation because at least he's a rookie. So maybe you could get a once in a lifetime shock with that. But other than that, dog, Joe Flacco's available for a reason. Hell, DTR was available in the 5th round for some reasons. I thought he was a better prospect than the 5th round pick, but for some reasons, he was there. See what I mean? It ain't about the backup quarterback. We're putting too much focus on backup quarterback. It's not about that. If you want a team that can survive an injury at the quarterback position, look at the Browns. Look at the Bengals. Build a good team. Then throw the backup in there. Because if the backup has a good team, there's a good chance that that backup can do something. Hey, you know who didn't spend a lot of money and won a Super Bowl with their backup? Nick Foles and the Philadelphia Eagles. You know why Nick Foles was able to do that with the Philadelphia Eagles that year? Because that team was absolutely loaded. We keep learning the wrong lesson because we want to glorify the quarterback position so much. We want to glorify whoever plays the quarterback position so much. We want to deify them and make them gods. Like, it's weird. Every time a quarterback has a good game, we got to make him a god. Like, it's so weird to me. Ain't about the quarterback position anymore. Once your starter goes down, and even if your starter goes down, if your starter is not good, it don't matter. It was never about them. It's about the other things on the team. But yet we make it about the quarterback no matter how mediocre that quarterback has proven themselves to be. If DTR or Joe Flacco get to the second round of the playoffs, and they don't play well getting to the second round, we still gonna make this about DTR and Joe Flacco. Not about the defense, not about anything else. We're gonna make it about them because we're so fixated and we just are so focused on making this all about the quarterback. When that only makes sense with 6 or 7 guys because they're elite. When you don't have an elite quarterback, it's not all about the quarterback. Case in point, Browns are able to win right now. Why? Because they've been able to have the other pieces on the team step up. Same thing with the Philadelphia Eagles. Same thing happened with the Denver Broncos. We thought Brock Osweiler was this great backup quarterback. No, he wasn't. He was terrible. After he wasn't on that Broncos team, he proved himself to be terrible, right? He played for the Texans. It showed itself to be terrible. He wasn't a good backup quarterback. He was just bad. But he was in a great situation. Had Eric Decker. You know what I mean? Had some of the best receivers in the NFL, a good offensive line, a good enough offensive line, in a decent run game, and they were able to make shit happen. We keep learning the wrong lessons because we keep wanting to focus everything on the quarterback position, no matter who that quarterback is. It's not. It's about what's around the quarterback. Your backup quarterback situation is only as good as your roster. If you don't have a great roster, your backup quarterback's not going to play well. He's not going to win that many games. If you do have a great roster, your backup quarterback's going to be okay. It ain't about putting the money at backup quarterback. It's about putting the money everywhere else so a backup quarterback can live in this situation because it's so good. That's the lesson we should learn. But we're so focused on backup quarterbacks that even though all these other backup quarterbacks that people talk about that the Browns should have worse records than the Cleveland Browns, we refuse to learn the lesson that is obvious when you talk about the Browns, which is, hey, your backup quarterback probably only as good as what's around him. That's why I think everybody gets wrong about the backup quarterback conversation. Ain't about them. This week, Jacksonville ain't about them. Rest of the season ain't about the backup. We not relying on the backup to win you games. We're relying on the defense to win the Browns games. And if the defense shows up, the Browns will win some games. If that doesn't, we won't. It's that simple. Not about the quarterback. The quarterback's along for the ride at this point, once you have a backup in. But I've seen these takes. I just want to say my piece on it. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.